Did you know that when it comes to weight loss, there are some major mistakes that women out there are making that are actually sabotaging them in achieving their health goals? Hi, welcome to the Wild Wisdom Show, and I'm Dr. Patricia Mills, holistic medical doctor with a root cause approach to health. And today we're going to be talking about the biggest mistakes women are making with weight loss, and maybe even more importantly, what to do instead. And today I'm joined by an amazing guest. This is Lauren Sanchez. She's a board certified holistic health practitioner, women's natural health specialist, and founder of Purposeful Wellness. Hi, Lauren. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Hi, Dr. Patricia. I'm excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
Oh, it's my absolute pleasure. And I'm just super excited to talk to you because we met when you reached out for me to participate in one of your summits. And I was just saying before we started rolling how impressed I was with how well organized your summit was. You had so many incredibly talented, very high end guest speakers, all in the holistic health field, which is just such an important area to be in. And I can't help but thinking that from the many, many interviews that you did, I think it was over 40 interviews, right? With some experts in the field of holistic health.
So that one last season was around 30. Yeah, a lot of interviews.
30. Yeah. And how many years have you been doing these summits for?
So 6 years now. So this is an annual event that I've been doing. The first two seasons, I call them seasons. The first two seasons I actually did in the same year. So we just ran season 7, which you were a part of graciously. So yeah, about 6 years I've been doing it.
And I couldn't help, thinking, you must have such an incredible reservoir of information now just from having, interviewed so many high level experts in their field that I'm excited to talk to you today about our topic because I have a feeling not only from your certification, which we'll get into more towards the end, because I'm curious about this board certified holistic health practitioner, what that involves. That sounds really amazing. But I just can't help but wonder that you are going to probably have a lot of things that you've at least osmotically, gotten from interviewing all these experts. So thank you for joining me today. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, I'm excited. I'm excited to have this conversation. And thanks
Me
for having
too.
me.
Yes. And let's jump in very high level for our audience here. So when it comes to weight loss, from your own practice and what from interviewing all these people and your clinical and interview experience, what are some of the commonest, like the biggest and most common mistakes that women are making when it comes to weight loss?
Yeah, so I love this question because there's a lot of them and they're really sneaky too. So I always start off my answer to this question with telling people, don't have anything on this about yourself. It means nothing about you. It's the world that we live in, right? So there's a lot of information coming at us. Science moves very slowly a lot of times. So probably the first mistake that I see, the biggest mistake that I see is not take into consideration that we are holistic beings. So we can't just focus on the food or just focus on the fitness or just focus on, spot correcting our health. It doesn't work that way. So I think one of the biggest mistakes, first and foremost, is not realizing that there's so many different things that play into metabolism and our ability to shed excess fat, if you will. So that's number one, not realizing or remembering or going at our goal of weight loss from a holistic perspective. I think the second one is, and this is very closely related to the first one, is forgetting about the fundamental lifestyle components of health. So I always say your body wants to be at its, ideal weight, at its healthiest, at its ideal, body composition as well too. So it is going to do everything that it can to, one, keep you alive, and two, be in that kind of homeostatic place of being at your ideal weight, your ideal body composition. So we cannot neglect fundamentals like getting outside and being in sunlight so we can synthesize vitamin D or have a breath of fresh air, which is going to help regulate those cortisol levels and all of that different sort of things. So managing our stress and taking into account things like sleep, and how that impacts our weight loss efforts as well too. And then I think the third mistake is really still going at our weight loss. And again, all of these are really integrally connected, if you will. But going at our weight loss with these old outdated principles like the calories in, calories out principle, the low carb or low fat, ways of going at our nutrition, taking a one size fits all kind of approach to nutrition, the high cardio and resistance training or not lifting weights. And forgetting that as a part of our fitness routine. So like these old ideas and ways of thinking, I think is another huge mistake that I see. And that's kind of like a collection of mistakes, if you will, because there's a lot of them in that same little bucket. But I think that's another huge mistake too. And that's just kind of a byproduct of, like I said, science changing very slowly and things being official, if you will, kind of catching up to what we know and things that you talk about on like your podcast and like my summit and things of that nature. So I think those are probably the biggest mistakes that I see is one, not going, at our goals from a holistic perspective, two, neglecting those fundamental lifestyle pieces. And that third one, which was, having and going at our goals with these outdated kind of approaches. So.
Okay, that's amazing. And I 100% agree. And I think if I was an audience, I would want to say, okay, so then tell me what to do. What should I do? So just kind of gleaning from what you said and then add on where you think it's important. So a holistic prescription for weight loss, let's call it like a protocol or prescription would be, number one, consider everything like everything that regulates metabolism. And you mentioned a few of those things. So yes, exercise is important, but the right kind of exercise. And you mentioned that strength training needs to be added into endurance, like cardio. And that's, as you say, like a very, just chronic cardio is a very outdated scientific notion that is being displaced by new science showing that if you actually add in a strength training routine to your cardio routine, so you might even need to drop a few cardio days to add a few strength training days, you get better outcomes. Like you actually lose weight better, especially the belly fat tends to drop off a lot easier. Yes. You mentioned sunshine exposure. So good exposure of sunshine. Sunshine's like a nutrient. You don't want too little or too much. You want in the Goldilocks zone. And we're kind of afraid of the sun these days, but we need enough sun to make vitamin D, enough sun to get into our eyes and trigger our hormonal responses in our brain as a result. So getting adequate, safe sun exposure. You mentioned sleep, which is so key because when you don't sleep well, you feel hungry the next day. It's going to sabotage all of your healthy habits or intentions towards healthy habits. So that's prioritizing sleep is really big. And we'll touch on the calories in equals calories out concept, but is there anything else that you would want to add to that weight loss prescription?
I would say also just remembering, and this kind of just goes, tying a bow on what we've already discussed so far too, but also making sure that we're taking like a root cause approach to things as well too. And I'm sure that'll filter in, more as we dive deeper into this conversation, but things like nutrient deficiency, things like gut dysbiosis, things like hormone imbalances are things that we absolutely have to take a look at and address as well. Anytime we're going at correcting or optimizing any part of our amazing bodies. So that's another thing too, is the root cause approach.
I agree so much. And what I'll do is for the viewers and the listeners, I'll put a couple links in relating to how to eat for hormone health and how to optimize sleep for hormone health, should you be interested. And I'll also put a link to Lauren if you want to work with her to get to all of those root causes, because, oftentimes you do need to personalize what it is that is going on in your own life. And having someone like Lauren to guide you can be such a huge game changer when it comes to your health. And the hormones, the calories in equals calories out thing, that one is such an interesting one, right? Because we were taught that as a medical doctor, I was taught what you put in, as long as you're exercising it out, you're going to be in homeostasis, you're going to be in balance, right? So what is the research showing us now?
Oh my goodness, that's such a big question. But basically, I Probably like the simplest way that I can put it is to say like your body is not this bank account where what you put in and exercising or what you spend, is what you're going to get as far as like your results go, right? So your body's not a bank account. It's more like a chemistry lab, right? So we eat and there's these different chemical reactions from our enzymes to, the different hormones that are part of the digestive process. All of these things play a role. So I just said a lot right there. So I said enzymes as chemicals. I said also hormones as chemicals too. So down this whole kind of downstream from first putting that bite in your mouth, there's a lot of things that happen. So as I mentioned, when I was talking about the whole making sure that we're going at any goal that we have with our health and body from a root cause approach, I mentioned that there's a couple of things that can stand in our way from, having that more of a bank account kind of result from our bodies. Because again, your body's not a bank; it's a chemistry lab. So there's a lot of different things that are going on there. But if we if we draw back to what I was saying about the root cause approach, if you have any issues with, maybe you're not producing enough stomach acid to break down your proteins, maybe you're not, chewing your food enough. I think that's it's one of the funniest recommendations that I give, but it's such an important thing is to chew your food properly so that these different chemicals that your body is producing has more surface area to help to digest these foods so that you can extract the nutrients from them. But if we are, having different holes in this process, we're not going to see the different results. We're not going to just experience our body in that kind of optimal state. I mean, digestion is such a huge process. To just say, what you put in and what you exercise off is coming off is just so outdated, and there's so many reasons why that's incorrect, starting with just the different chemical short kind of excerpt of the different chemical processes that go on when we first even take a first bite of food. But yeah, things like insulin, our insulin being off, things like our digestion being off at any point, is the main reason. Those different holes that we can poke in the process of digestion is probably one of the biggest reasons why this whole calories in, calories out thing really doesn't work. Your body is not a bank account, it is a chemistry lab. So
Yeah, no, I 100% agree. And it's interesting because people often use the thing like, oh, but if you undereat, you'll lose weight. And if you overeat, you'll gain weight. And yes, on the extremes of the spectrum, extreme being not eating enough and an extreme being eating too much, you will get into that situation. But in between, as you say, there's so much influence on the chemistry, the digestive chemistry and the hormonal chemistry. Like if I eat 100 calories of Skittles versus 100 calories of broccoli, the hormonal response to that, right? Yeah, like
big
one will put me in fat burning mode and one will put me in fat storing mode. That I create more fat. Guess which one does which, right? So
yes, exactly.
broccoli for the win. So I 100% agree with you, and that's how I teach. How to keep your metabolism healthy. And what I would like to transition into now, because I think we've given people like quite a few things that they could start working on or start looking into or start diving deeper into. This is very high level, like, these are the things that we're making mistakes on, and this is where you want to start diving into should you be interested, right? Eating for hormone health, how to optimize sleep and hormonal sleep and all those sorts of things. So my question for you is, because you're a clinician with practical experience, what are your thoughts on people, on this journey, whether it's weight loss or any other kind of health goal, and motivation? In other words, how do people, stay motivated? Are there some tricks to that? And motivation can be around creating healthy habits and sticking with them, because a lot of people will have the energy and the impetus to just start, and they'll get very excited. They're hot out of the gates, and then what happens is over a few days or weeks or even months, depending on the person, that motivation and those healthy habits will drop off. What has been your experience with that? And how?
Yes, absolutely. So I love this question right now because I think my answer for a lot of people shocks a lot of people. So I was actually just this was a couple of weeks ago. I think it was actually it's March 1st now. So last month in January, I was actually getting my hair done and I'm sitting in the hair chair. And of course, doing what we do, a lot of times we just get in conversations about this, right? Because we're passionate about what we're doing. So the woman who's doing my hair, she's asking me, right? the woman who's doing my hair, she's asking me, a bunch of questions, and I'm loving it, and just serving her with what I know. And one of the questions she asked me was exactly what you asked me, like, how do you stay motivated to, I believe we were talking about fitness at this point, but she's like, how do you stay motivated to go and do, your workouts? And I said, I don't. And I think that was really shocking, for she's like, wait, what do you mean? Like, what do you mean? Like, you don't? And I think we have this big misconception that, like, oh, once we start these healthy habits and we like get into a groove, like we're always going to be motivated. And that's not the case. Like, motivation it's an emotion. It's very fickle. It comes and goes. And so this is like a big thing that I want people to, take the veil off and just kind of start to think about this differently, is you're never going to be motivated to do, what we need to do in order to get to that optimal state of health, whatever that looks like for you, whatever you're going towards right now. And so it's really about building the habits. It's really about transforming who we are, transforming how we think about certain things, in order to make those habits stick. That is what we got to have to go towards, is creating the habits, not leaning on motivation, because it's here one day, it's gone the next. And then we get into this kind of spiral of thinking like something's wrong with us because we can't stick to something. No, 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 no. We just don't have the habits in place, or our environment, set up that's conducive to us maintaining these different habits. And I will say, though, you can increase the amount of days that you can be motivated. So that's something that is a byproduct, I think, of having these set habits and being consistent. I always tell people, give yourself the gift of consistency, because it truly is a gift. But when you start being consistent with these different habits, and ways of doing things and ways of thinking as well too, it does change kind of who you are. It changes who you are as a person. So the way that you're thinking about things is different. So you might perceive that as being motivated more times than not. Also, like your body, your chemistry, like we've been talking about chemistry so far, that those things are going to change as well too, to help you, not have cravings as much, if you will, as a single example. But I think that's like a big thing and big message, big takeaway that I want people to leave with, is you're not always going to be motivated. So stop trying to, grind yourself into this whole, like, I have to be motivated all of the time sort of thing. No, 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 no. We just get to set you up for creating the habits around, whatever it is that you are working towards in your health.
It's so interesting because when you were describing this, I'm a pretty consistent person. Like when I think about it, you're right. For me, there are many days when I'm not motivated. However, I have the habit of, when my alarm goes off or when I wake up, that I get up, I go to the bathroom, brush my teeth, go downstairs, do my meditation and then my exercising, and then I come up and make breakfast. And it's just such a routine for me
Mhm.
that I do it whether or not I feel like it. And I
Exactly.
think that's the thing, that sometimes we rely on our feeling. Like, I just don't feel like it today, right?
Mhm.
And I think it's a lot of the psychology around this. And I'm not a psychologist, but from what I've noticed with myself and the people I've worked with, is to say, acknowledge the feeling, don't judge yourself for it, and
Mhm.
just put it aside and be like, oh wow, I'm not feeling like it today. There
Mhm.
it is. There's that feeling.
Mhm.
And now I'm going to go downstairs and, I'm going to go out the door and go to the gym, or I'm going to go for that walk or that run, or I'm going to do that strength training or
Mhm.
meditation or whatever it is. You lead with action,
Mhm.
right? And it's kind of like Nike said, just do it.
Yeah.
Well, it's just such a beautiful slogan, because it's true. When you have an overarching aspiration, like you have to bring yourself to that, to say, why is it that I'm going to be engaging in this habit right now? What's my why? My why is, I want to lose weight so that I feel amazing in my skin again. I can smile at myself in the mirror. I love putting on my clothes. I feel light and bright in my skin. I have more energy to go out and do the things I love to do with my friends and family. And then you say, okay, because that's my overarching goal and aspiration, I'm not going to let my feelings get in the way of that, because feelings are so, they can be brought on by the smallest thing. Like,
Mhm.
someone says something to you the night before you go to bed, and you wake up, you're a little bit down and you don't feel like it. And that thing that person said to you the day before is going to sabotage your greater goal and aspiration. It should really not have that power over you.
Right.
Right. So I love what you say, because it's true. Sometimes, it's actually the beauty of, like, non-actions. Like, I don't have to be motivated.
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. And when, like I said, when we give ourselves that gift of consistency too, um, we're in those routines and we are very well acquainted. Here's the thing too, I feel like a lot of us are, um, and I hear this all the time with my clients when we go through like our first, couple weeks of protocol, where we don't realize how not great we feel until we start feeling much better, right? And so that can be, like I was mentioning, there's ways to like increase your motivation or give you more days of motivation, but also keeping in mind that you don't need that to take the action like you were mentioning. But when you give yourself that gift of consistency, you start getting those little results and you start feeling so much better than you even thought was possible for yourself. And it's like that is motivation in and of itself. Like, I want to hold on to this feeling, I want to hold on to and keep moving forward with these different results. So I think that's just big takeaway message that I want people to go with. Like, don't be judgmental on yourself. It's very human, but you don't need motivation to go after your goals. You just need some well established habits, so that those can start to be ingrained into the fibers of your life and the results thereafter.
And do you have a framework that you use with your clients for creating consistent, healthy new habits?
Yes. So I love this. So I like to make this kind of like a game, right? So we first take a peek at like, where are the areas that, we could kind of double down on to get the most bang for our buck in terms of results. So when people ask me like, where should I start? If I'm wanting to lose weight, or I'm just wanting to get into new healthy habits that could serve my life, right? It's sleep. We mentioned sleep a little while ago, and I feel like that's another kind of response that shocks people. Like, wait, what do you mean? You don't want me to like cut out calories or like take away the sugar or anything like that? Like, that's not first, it's sleep that's first. And I'm like, yes. And why? Because it's going to help you check all of those boxes. Like, we're correcting the energy, we're correcting the appetite issues that we might have, cravings for certain things that are not going to be serving our goals, right? We're tapping into stronger immunity, we're tapping into better mental clarity and focus for productive days. Like, we just check so many boxes when we go after sleep first. So I'm going to use sleep as an example, as like a first place to kind of start here, because that's one that I go at and address probably with 99.9% of my clients first. Like, that's something that we address first, is sleep. So we take a look at, let's say we're kind of looking at, where am I struggling? And sleep is the first one. Like I said, we're going to use that as an example. So there's so many different things, Dr. Patricia, and I know you know this, and I know this is going to be a part of that guide that you mentioned for listeners, will be down in the show notes, but there's so many different things that we can do to optimize our sleep. And I know, hearing that, if there's anyone on the end of this hearing that and they're kind of struggling with their sleep, they might be resenting that, but I truly, truly do mean that. Like, sleep is one of our most important biological functions, and thank God it is one of the ones that we can fix pretty quickly as well too. So making sure that we are, let's go back to the example. If we're looking at our life and how we live day to day, and we see that sleep is an area for great improvement, opportunity for improvement, let's start there. So there's certain things that we can do, and I always tell people that correcting your sleep, for example, is kind of like an all day thing, right? Like, you could start correcting your sleep first thing in the morning. Like, what? First thing in the morning? I just woke up. So if we go outside and we step out and we have the sun touching our skin and is in our eyes, that's helping regulate our cortisol and our serotonin, which is really important for our drive for the day. And also being lower in the day, that's going to be really important to us being able to fall asleep more efficiently. So stepping outside and just having some sunlight, first thing in the morning. I don't know, there's a lot of people that wake up at varying times of the day. So if, the sun's not out yet when you wake up, just go outside when you can. But that's a really easy way to kind of start to fix your sleep earlier in the day, right? So then we get a little bit later on in the day, and we want to make sure that we are fueling ourselves in a way that's not going to be spiking our blood sugar or overstimulating to us. in a lot of different ways that it could be. So we're eating a good healthy meal at nighttime. I like to prioritize good protein, good healthy fats, and a non-starchy veggie as like a good place to start, and keeping that like 2 hours away from our ideal bedtime. And then making sure that we're winding down at night as well, making sure that we're getting enough of the nutrients that are really important to sleep, like magnesium, like vitamin B6, making sure that we are not blocking or hindering our own melatonin production and things of that nature. So there's a ton of things that we could do all throughout the day to help to correct our sleep. But let's say, like I said, we're, trying to initiate these new healthier habits. That would be like a first place that I would start. And I know I gave a lot of different, ways of going about doing that, and you're going to get a lot of ways in Dr. Patricia's guide. But if you just take a couple of those, I always say like take like 1 to 3 habits and start implementing them. Like right away, as you're hearing this, you can start to implement these today and start to see some changes. But I would start there. Next, after that, if I could, kind of put these categories in kind of like a hierarchy, if you will, after sleep, I would, of course, start working on like food. And there's a lot of different ways that we can go about that as well, too. And just to kind of give us a just kind of baseline overview here is really looking at the source of our food. So we want to be making sure that we are eating good, clean, whole foods. We want to be eating that whole foods, plant-rich way of eating with a good amount of protein in our days as well too. So I always say healthy protein, healthy fat, healthy carbohydrate in every single plate that we're eating, making sure that we're eating balanced. That's going to be very supportive to our digestion. That's going to be very supportive to our metabolism and our energy levels throughout the day as well. And then also just making sure that we are getting enough of certain nutrients. As I was mentioning, you asked me earlier about like the biggest mistakes, and the third one that I mentioned was that kind of outdated advice. So making sure that we're getting enough calories in for the day, right? And also making sure that we're not demonizing those very important macronutrients like fats, healthy fats, and our healthy carbohydrates as well too. I like to stick those non-starchy carbohydrates in breakfast and dinner, and have like the more starchy ones at lunch. That's usually, how I kind of teach people to kind of structure their meals that way. But kind of getting back to the top of your question, I know I've given like so many different things for people to kind of go with, but after we've kind of fixed nutrition, I would kind of go to, and there's a lot of different ways that we can do that. I just gave that very baseline kind of understanding of making sure that we are removing those processed foods, and our diet is more so comprised of those good, healthy, whole foods, and it's balanced. Each of our plates are balanced. And then lastly, the last bucket that I would really start to focus on would be like movement. How am I moving throughout the day? I have a lot of women who, they start their day with like lifting, but then they're sedentary for the rest of the day. And I'm like, I love that you're lifting, but we can't just be in a chair for the rest of the day as well, right? So how can we start to work in some more movement? Could that be a walk after dinner? And then for the women who are completely sedentary and are not doing any type of workouts, I like to kind of nudge us in the direction of starting to integrate that resistance training that we were saying is so important for our immune system, for our metabolism, for our bone health, all of the things. But that's where I would go next. So I would work on sleep, I would work on nutrition, then I would work on the fitness or movement component of things as well. And as far as like the framework goes, after we've kind of identified those are the areas that we want to start to focus on, the framework is as simple as like, what are the habits that I can kind of put in place? So we'll work on that. And then probably my favorite part of this entire framework, after we do the assessment, then we take our pick of the habits, then we're looking at what I like to call failure barriers. So I would love to say that once we made the decision to start to put these different habits in place, that everything is sunshine and rainbows and we can just go ahead and execute. But we all know that's not usually how it works, right? Things come up, the babysitter cancels, the boss needs you to work late, what have you. So what can we put in place for those less than ideal situations that present themselves to us? Of course, we cannot, foresee every single circumstance that is, not going to be ideal coming our way, but we have a lot of history, right? So if I work with a lot of, professional women in the corporate space. So a lot of times it's, during Q3, for example, we get really busy. So I work a lot of overtime during that. time. Okay, so we know that already. So how can we plan for situations? How can we plan and strategize for that time when it comes and presents itself? Does that look like having a healthy meal prep service during that quarter of the year? Does that look like having, your spouse kind of pitch in? Does that look like having, maybe someone come into the home to provide, some type of home support service? Like, what does that look like during that time that we know is coming? Or another example that I give is, the woman who, she is, this was one that was super common during COVID, when it was like, oh, okay, we're going to have someone come over the house towards the end of COVID, come over to the house to do like the babysitting, but then the babysitter cancels. And it's like, okay, that doesn't mean we get to give up our workout, right? What workout can we do instead? If we had like a workout that was already pre-picked for you, you knew what it was, you had the equipment, we can go ahead and do that. So when the babysitter cancels and you can't go to the gym, you have something else to do instead. So it's really about, taking that assessment of where we are, where are the kind of holes or gaps in our day and how we're living, then taking a peek at what are the habits that we can fill in for those gaps, and then adding on top of that those failure barriers, where it's like, okay, what are those situations that have kind of been obstacles to me and keeping consistency with these habits in the past? How can I plan for those and put some failure barriers? I like to give the kind of analogy of they're kind of like guardrails when you go bowling, those little guardrails that you put up so you don't get a gutter ball. That's what failure barriers are. They make it harder for us to be not successful than they do to make us successful. So that's kind of my long-winded answer for that framework question that you asked me there.
Okay, I love it. No, and I think it's really important because what you identified was you have to first determine which are the habits that are worth investing your time in, right? The
Yes.
appropriate habits that have the biggest bang for your buck,
Mhm.
lowest hanging fruit, and starting with the ones that are like the big yield, like you said, the sleep, for example, in the case of weight loss. And then I love the idea. I mean, it's interesting because when I would do rehabilitation medicine and we'd be creating a rehabilitation plan for a patient who is an inpatient and we were transitioning them to going back home, like out of the hospital after major spine injury and that kind of stuff. I remember the way I taught my residents was identify the barriers, right? So
Mhm.
these are the goals. But in order for us to actually like achieve things and stay on target and have everybody functioning as like a smooth unit, right? Everybody working together on the team, the rehab team. It was up to us as the people providing the plan and working with the patient to help be very realistic. And it's kind of like the the Oracle of Delphi, like know thyself.
Yes.
You just have to be so honest. You have to be like, honestly, the chances of me doing this is like, and they say using a scale of 0 to 10, if it's anything less than a 7 out of 10, like I'm
Mhm.
confident I can do this, then you have to make a new plan. So it's like, oh, you should go strength training like 3 times a week at the gym. Well, actually, my confidence I'll actually be able to do that is a 4 out of 10. And it's like, well, how can we change this plan? How can we change this habit so that you're at least a 7 out of 10 confidence? And it's like, well, I could probably do some strength training at home once a week and go to the gym twice a week. I feel like I can do that. I'm pretty confident. 8 out of 10, I can do that. So that's like the more likelihood that that habit is going to engage
Yes.
in your life. So I love that you brought that up. And one last question that I have in my mind, and then I'll just ask if there's anything else you want to add, is what would you tell someone who's watching this or listening to this, and they're feeling really stuck? They keep starting over, and they have got the best intentions, but they just seem to get moving in the direction that they want to be. What would you tell that person listening or watching?
Yeah. So the first thing I would say is be compassionate with yourself, you
Mm,
know, um, make sure you're not coming at wanting to make a change or do things differently from a place of beat up, but that you're doing it from a place of self love and that being your kind of guiding intention. Then I would say take a listen to this interview. Like I shared a lot of things. The last question that Dr. Patricia asked me about kind of the framework for change, that's exactly what I use with my clients. We make it very, very tailored, of course. So it's a longer process than what you heard me go through, but it's something that you could absolutely start the process of doing on your own, is taking a look at, where am I kind of struggling or missing the mark? And then taking it a step further and asking why you think that is. That's something that I didn't really dive into deeply, but why is this actually a struggle for me? Is it something that is external, like a spouse or a boss, or is it something that's internal, like a limiting belief about something, or something that would benefit from a perspective shift? But kind of take a peek there. Where am I missing the mark, and why do I think I'm missing the mark? I think probably the hardest part about all of this is kind of what you said, Dr. Patricia, of being honest with ourselves, because we have that temptation to judge ourselves and to beat ourselves up mentally, and it's so unnecessary, and it's so something that is not going to help you get to where you want to get faster. So just be gentle with yourself. Go back and, like I said, listen to this, take a peek at where you are kind of missing the mark and why, and then dive into what are some habits. There's so many things, especially when we're going at our health from a holistic approach. There's so many things that we can do to start to feel better and look better and think better and perform better. So many different things. So if we just kind of start there and start to kind of fill in, like, what are some habits that are realistic for my life and my day to day? And then think about, like we were just mentioning, is those failure barriers. Like, what are the things that might get in my way when I'm trying to execute on this? And starting to put in some strategies. I always tell people when I'm teaching the concept of failure barriers, have 3 to 5 failure barriers in your back pocket, 3 to 5 alternatives that you can kind of lean into when we have those situations that present themselves that are less than ideal or not supportive to us actually following through on the things that we know we want to and need to follow through on. So I would say kind of go through that process. I think probably one of like the biggest points of confusion, I think, for a lot of people when they are going at, optimizing their health, whether it's to lose weight or improve performance in some other capacity, is probably the nutrition piece. And I love that your podcast, Dr. Patricia, is wild wisdom. Like, that's the fundamental here. And that's one thing that I would just love for people to remember as well, too, is like, tap into that wild wisdom. Like, what makes sense with nutrition? There's a lot of stuff out there that is very clickbait, that is very fear mongering in a lot of ways too. But just check in with yourself. Like, does that make, in a lot of cases, if we just ask, does that make sense? We can knock a lot of things out. I think another thing to really pay attention to when it comes to choosing a style of eating for yourself, of course, we can look at genetics. Of course, we can look at like nutrient deficiencies and things of that nature. But what are you going to be consistent with? Is it something that is true to nature? Is it something that is basically giving your body what it needs? And is it something that is not going to be spiking to the blood sugar? I think that's another, if we approach it from the blood sugar angle, that's another way that we can really make nutrition make a lot of sense for us as well too. So I would say kind of start there, just go through those 3 kind of steps that I covered, and then find a way of eating that is very practical for you, that is very something that makes sense to you as well too, and very true to nature. I say that's like a big key to like remember as well too. And any of those inclinations towards like the old ways of doing things, like eating fewer calories, or protein makes you bulky or fat makes you fat, or any of those things, just check those things as well too, because a lot of that is such old dated information and just old ways of thinking as well too. Like, you need every single one of the macronutrients that we have been blessed with on this earth. So just kind of start there, go through that 3-step process that I talked about. And then probably my biggest recommendation for a lot of people too is, if you have been consistent with something, this style of doing things that we're talking about, or just another protocol that you're going through, if you've been consistent with it for 3 months and you're still not getting the same results, if you're still dealing with things like low energy and constipation, if you're still, kind of throwing spaghetti at the wall, playing Dr. Google with your health, and you don't really have anything to show for it after, 3 months of doing things, or it's just not sustainable, you realize, reach out to a practitioner. Like, I think it's probably one of the best investments that you can make for your health and for your life. as I said earlier, I think so many of us are disconnected to how our health truly impacts how we live our day, or how we live our lives on a day-to-day basis, from our relationships and our productivity to the thoughts that we have and energy levels, all these different sort of things. But it truly is one of the best investments that you can make for yourself. So give yourself, I know we all go through those temptations of like, I should be able to do this on my own type of thing. And you might be able to, and I hope that you are, and are able to create something sustainable for you. But be gentle with yourself, be loving toward yourself, be realistic with yourself as well too, to reach out to someone to get some expert support on your journey as well too, to help you start moving in the right direction in a way that is science-based and makes sense for your life, and you have someone there supporting you with creating the consistency too. So those would probably be my two biggest pieces of advice.
And I promised I would ask this because I think it's relevant also to what we're just talking about. Because, when you're looking for a health professional to lead you, the reality is that a conventional trained dietitian or nutritionist will probably not be the answer, because they're relying on what they're taught is more of that old school science, which is okay for certain disease conditions, and that's even a bit debatable nowadays. But what I'm recommending to people is more, naturopathic or functional medicine or functional nutrition. Tell me more about your board certified holistic health practitioner, either for people who are interested in working with you and want to understand better, like what is the training behind your expertise, and also should they encounter another board certified holistic health practitioner, like what does that mean?
Yeah, great question. Thank you for asking this. So basically, I have three different certifications, and underneath that kind of umbrella is the term holistic health practitioner. So basically, I'm trained in functional nutrition. I also have like my fitness trainer certifications as well too. I love fitness. I'm totally not that practitioner who will be in the gym with you, but love doing like the whole fitness plan and virtual and all that fun stuff. Love it. So I've got the fitness training background, and then I also have like the holistic coaching background as well too. So that's working with like the kind of like interpersonal conversations, the actual coaching aspect of like mindset and all of those different sort of things. So like I said, that umbrella of those three is holistic health practitioner. And then the board certification I went after, just to add a little bit more bang to the buck with my certifications and be kind of recognized in that light as well too, by the American Association of Drugless Practitioners. So yeah, that's pretty much it in a nutshell there. And basically,
Impressive.
yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah, yeah. So, and basically, I help women basically do what we've been talking about here, like balance hormones naturally, lose weight naturally, and also too, like I love part of the functional nutrition certification is like the herbal side of things too. So I love herbs and nutraceuticals and doing things that way as well too. But yeah, basically approaching optimal health from a holistic standpoint using nature and lifestyle, which to optimize our health. I love it. I love what I do.
Well, I love that, and I love it too. And I'm so glad I asked, because you're like what do they call it, a triple threat.
Oh,
Like the actor that sings and dances and
yeah.
acts. That's really impressive, because yeah, you've got the functional nutrition, you've got the exercise piece, and the fact that you're recommending resistance training tells me that you know your stuff, because that's very important for hormone health and weight loss and all those, and metabolism and all those things. And then the coaching is, I mean, I think it's just huge. I can't understate the importance of working with someone who has all of those three areas really under your belt. So congratulations. That must have been a lot of work and a lot of effort. And you're just like a repository of knowledge. And not only that, you're also a public educator, and you're an expert by virtue of interviewing lots of experts as well. So if you're listening to this or watching this and you feel like that being stuckness part could be improved or mitigated by some accountability and guidance from an expert who will work with you one-on-one, definitely reach out to Lauren. Maybe you do some discovery calls, right, to see if you guys are a good fit. That's often the case, where you just have a little chat and see if it's a good fit or not. So thank you, Lauren. I'll put all of your contact information in the notes so that people know exactly where to reach out to you.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much for having me, Dr. Patricia. This is fun.
You're very welcome. And for those of you who are catching this, please share, save, subscribe. Sharing is caring. You never know when someone's going to benefit from this wild wisdom in their life. And I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, evening, or night. And I'll see you next time. Bye.